Access granted.
So here we see one of our big homage to Deus Ex 1. It's kind of like the Illuminati thing, the hand that's controlling the world or wants to control it globally eventually. And here it is. It's a new spin on it. It's in this secret part of the Picus building, which is obviously controlled by the Illuminati. And I think it looks pretty good. It really looks like a real sculpture.
And in our game, it's that the Picus is controlling the news, and therefore it controls what the public know, and that represents it very well.
Totally.
Access granted.
So here we are inside the room that we call the compositing room. This is kind of our show don't tell moment to show how much news is faked by Picus.
I think it's the George Orwell's 1984 kind of room.
Yeah, it's that 1984 kind of feeling where they're actually changing
that
the
shit
news
goes on
stories
today,
that
man.
they're doing, and they're putting in extra stuff to highlight the news that they want to tell. Like the war in Australia is going fine when it might not be.
So with this room, what is interesting is that what part of the news that is real and what part that is not. Like
Truth and lies, baby.
Access granted.
Interesting room here. We can send a screen some images of the moon and the moon landing and all that, and it kind of like maybe entices the player to think that the landing might have been faked or whatnot, and this is really, did it really happen or not, and is it Picus who helped doing this?
like in many conspiracy theories out
But
there.
yeah, but in truth, I mean, that was the original idea, was that we'll show that the landing on the moon was fake, but then we realized this is 2027, and so how can we make it work with that? So
With
we
that,
actually made it the
it's a-
reverse, which is that they're trying to show that there isn't as much building going on the moon as
Yeah.
there was. And that was one idea, but we kind of cross signals here with everything, because that was the idea we wanted to get across, but we put it in a room that it shouldn't have been in, right?
Yeah, this is exactly what happened, because this room was supposed to be a mocap room. The device that's in the middle, this kind of hemisphere thing, it exists today. It's a very advanced kind of mocap, especially for facial expressions and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know what's happened. I probably went to grab a coffee or something, and someone put a hologram in the middle of that mocap thing. I have to admit, it still makes for a pretty visual. Yet this
It's
is
just not what it was.
this is just not at all what it was supposed to be.
Actually, that's one of the really cool scenes in the game that we really like.
I
think
really like
all
it.
of us. Yeah.
I love the way Eliza is played and portrayed. The fact that I remember I was really surprised when I first saw it. It really works well when you don't. It takes you by surprise where she's going to be positioned. You know,
Right.
as the camera moves around and whatnot, and the fact that at one point there's two of her.
She appears from different angles.
From different angles and all that kind of stuff, and then we're gonna see at one point
The entrance
Fedorova.
of Fedorova. It was really cool the way that we set up that the stealthy, invisible predator is there. So that was one of the really cool aspects that we wanted to bring in to just kind of show her there.
Yeah,
Other than the fact that Fedorova's design is quite interesting.
and this is one of the places in the game where we see it really, really well. She's still very silent, and she just makes that little smirk. I don't remember exactly what she does with her face, but there's a little something with her lips, and yeah, quite like it.
Policies are you programmed to protect?
Sal is one of them, I think. But there are others.
Tell me. Who else is involved in this, Eliza? Where's Megan Reed? Who ordered the kidnapping?
I want to tell you, Adam, but I cannot.
Why not?
Because she won't let me. She is coming.
This there was a little bit of controversy over this how we ended this fight. The script kind of implies that she's not dead yet, and are you going to save her? And the reason that it was written in that way was because initially we had wanted to have the final blow for the bosses, with the exception of Barrett, who blows himself up, was up to the player to decide whether he was going to do it or not. And so we kind of wanted to leave this question here as to whether or not she actually was dead, and when the cutscene's over, the player could end up killing her. But in truth, we kind of lost that in the process of our production. And we never really went back to this script and tried to make sure that it didn't leave that impression with people. And we never did change the lines, and instead we ended up hoping that just from the amount of blood that she was slowly losing, it would end up...
People would get that.
People would get that
she's
she
dead.
was dead, and there was nothing you could do about it.
There's been a change of plans. Serif's team must not make it to the hearing.
But that's too soon. If you want me to remove the GPLs, I'll need a full operating suite. Does the facility have one?
Barrett assures me it does.
Vima. That's where they were taken. But why? Why take them at all?
An acquaintance of yours has the answer. David Sarif.
Sarif?
I have copied the audio transmission to a handheld playback device. I suggest you take it and leave quickly.
questions.
And I have already told you too much. This passage will take you to your companion. Just be careful, Adam. Because everybody lies.
So the interesting thing with the Fedorova boss fight, in my opinion, was that she was a character who was mute.
Yeah.
And it made it very interesting because normally you need what we call the barks to give the player feedback. But I was very insistent that she shouldn't be able to shout anything, or I mean maybe she could grunt and stuff like that, but nothing else. So I think it was interesting because it enabled us to bring Eliza into the fight and kind of have Eliza give you the feedback that you needed and thus make her a participant in this fight. But we weren't really sure if it was going to work out at first.
I think it worked out well. Eliza is sort of that Joker character in the story, right? And she wants to help you, and you know if she's good or bad or whatever, what's going on. So at that moment, it sort of becomes clear that she's got her own agenda. She's got that thing that you need to survive. Jensen needs to survive, and Eliza is sort of a pawn at that point. She's she's disposable. So that's one thing that was played out in the gameplay as well, where she's sort of telling you where she is, what she's thinking, what she's doing.
It was a clever way to compensate for the fact that Fedorova
for the
was on
mute.
screen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That lead on to all the problems that Fedorova is supposed to be so stealthy and everything. She uses cloaks. She used a different type of claymore than the player, the Typhoon system, and it came out to the idea too that if the player has the X-ray vision, basically a smart vision when he sees through walls and surfaces, that you could always see Fedorova walking around, so that was very easy. So I went to the artists and asked them to do some kind of internal servers thing that you can see and block the view a little bit, so to make it harder. And I came on to the idea that we emphasize more on our footsteps in the water, because it's supposed to be like this huge room with cooling liquids on the floor and everything. So that came out as well, like that kind of feedback. If you really look closely, you can actually tell where she is.
And you mentioned the typhoon, and that was one of the big things too, because she shouldn't have the typhoon, because that was proprietary cutting edge technology that was created at Seraph. Yeah. So how could she have the typhoon? But it actually worked out well story wise, because we were able to sit there and say that, well, they were able to download some of the data, but not all of it. So that gave us the opportunity to give her a typhoon, but it was subtly different.
It's actually the big introduction. When you start fighting her, she comes straight at you and uses it. So
and it's different.
What the hell is going on? Yeah.
So the interesting thing with the Fedorova boss fight, in my opinion, was that she was a character who was mute.
Yeah.
And it made it very interesting, because normally you need what we call the barks to give the player feedback. But I was very insistent that she shouldn't be able to shout anything, or I mean maybe she could grunt and stuff like that, but nothing else. So I think it was interesting, because it enabled us to bring Eliza into the fight and kind of have Eliza give you the feedback that you needed, and thus make her a participant in this fight. But we weren't really sure if it was going to work out at first.
I think it worked out well. Eliza is sort of that Joker character in the story, right? And she wants to help you, and you know if she's good or bad or whatever, what's going on. So at that moment, it sort of becomes clear that she's got her own agenda. She's got that thing that you need to survive. Jensen needs to survive, and Eliza is sort of a pawn at that point. She's she's disposable. So that's one thing that was played out in the gameplay as well, where she's sort of telling you where she is, what she's thinking, what she's doing.
It was a clever way to compensate for the fact that Fedorova was on screen. Yeah.
Jensen, Eliza Kassan just contacted me and told me I should meet you here. You ready to go?
Sit tight, Malik. I need to check something out first.
Please hurry. You ready to go now, Jensen?
Yeah, take us home, Malik.
Amen to that. command at HQ. A riot's broken out. Boss says to drop you at your apartment.
I could use a shower.
You'll have to make it quick. He's on his way to meet you.
So we're here on the roof of Adam Jensen's apartment, and one of the things I really wanted when we landed there is that I wanted the players to be able to have a very great view of the city and everything. And it turned out that it was not as easy to do as what I would have expected, because we would have to render the streets just below us and everything, and that was all cheated. And also with the riot going around, and we had to figure out in which direction the riot was, and if it was in the direction where we could see, then it would be hard to pull off. So we had to make sure that the visible part of the city was on the other side. And
we also wanted to have all those choppers, those cop choppers flying by with the lights and the smoke and stuff like that coming in. And I just realized recently, obviously we know that the choppers, we never managed to put them in, but just recently I saw that there is smoke. There are plumes of smoke.
But it's very subtle.
But it's so, I didn't even know. And it's so subtle. So, because these are things that we could have done, but I guess we just ran out of time or something.
So for a lot of people, I think this is one of the best cutscenes in the game, because it really shows the switch in dynamic between Jensen and Seraph. Up until now, Jensen has really been treating Seraph as his boss and following his orders, but having just found out what he found out in Montreal, he's no longer trusting him. And I think the cutscene shows it in a very visual way. It shows that tension with this part right here where he refuses to pour the cup, and it really does kind of communicate. And we had the actors recording it together in the studio. A lot of times in games you usually only get one actor in a booth at a time, and they're just doing half the lines. But for us, it was really, really important to get the dynamic that happens when two actors are together. And I think they had a really good time doing it together because they could feed off of each other. And the other thing that was interesting for me as a writer in this is that I really wanted to make that point, and to never have from this point on Jensen refer to Seraph as boss again. And a lot of times in the beginning he's always like boss, 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 and I never wanted him to do it again. And unfortunately it slipped in just once, and I can still kill myself for that, because it was the rush of doing it. We had cut like Utah or something like that, and we needed to rewrite something, and I was just rushing, and it's like
Forgot about it,
and
so it didn't happen. But the cutscene does an excellent job of showing that break.
Yeah, and what I like about that is that it's all in subtlety. It's like it's not too much in your face, and that's why I think that one works also in a very good way. And also the fact that as we were building in the Illuminati in that, we tried to have a fresh spin to not go into the old cliche. Oh, the Illuminati, exactly.
Yeah, it's true, and actually that's what we did, because when the first Deus Ex came out, the Illuminati was hot topic, but since then, it's so old. So the way we dealt with it even was just to have when Seraph brings it up and fully believing it, and Jensen is just like, "Are you talking about the Illuminati?" Like. and basically feeling the same way I'm sure that a lot of people today feel when you bring up the Illuminati.
Adam, you've got to handle this delicately. We don't know Taggart is involved, and we can't afford another punch in the face. I'm trusting you with this one.
So Adam's apartment is one of I think, the most intricate, kind of interesting places in the game. During the production, we actually called it the Adams Museum, and the whole idea is because that's what we wanted it to be. We wanted people to just walk through it, and just by observing, just through all the show don't tell, to get a lot of information on Adam's background and Adam's personality and what's happened to him in the past, and also show that he likes cereals a lot. And also, there's a secret stash behind the TV, which is a bit of an homage to the first Deus Ex, which was, I think, in Paul's apartment, where you had all the secret stuff with the computers behind the shelves and whatnot. And also, Mary does all this stuff on the
there's all this stuff on the workbench, because we had written in his backstory this big long thing about how he's always been a collector. He used to go to old secondhand stores and stuff and find old mechanical objects that he liked to take apart, and because he was curious and he was very into that. And so we pulled that out, and what was interesting about it is we didn't actually tell the story of his backstory, but people who came and saw that workbench then made up their own stories and basically wrote to us and were saying things like, wow, it's so cool. It's like how he's trying to understand his own body and his new mechanics. And I was like, oh, I like that backstory a lot better than what I came up with. So yeah, that's what we're going with.
But actually, it was that too. This room was supposed to give you all the personality of Adam Jensen through his environment. So. So with this second city up, the second visit to Detroit was our way that we had to cut some city hubs that we have planned and everything, but we wanted to maintain a good pace between the hubs, the compounds, and everything. And to make that pace happening, we had to reuse some of the existing maps.
Yeah, and also production-wise, I mean, I already designed a whole section of the city with a freeway with a bridge crossing over it, and there was apartments on the other side. And whatnot.
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but it was cut because
And
also
side quests.
production-wise, we could not just do that. And
that was a
basically-
long time ago.
Yeah, we just trim it all the way to just the convention center itself.
Yeah. And we were debating, we need this highway because it would feel that the city's bigger again, and you
Yes.
feel that it's alive. Yeah. That was pretty fun, yeah. Well, now we're with Patrick Garon, which was our technical level designer on the project. And for this moment, what we want to talk about is the fact that we wanted to have some events in the game where they were not necessarily side quests per se, but they were events in which your morality could be affected if someone is attacked or something like that, and you could intervene and with consequences. But it didn't happen, right?
Yeah, to do scripted events in Deus Ex, it was hard. Like we had lots of good ideas, and we had two major limitations. Like the first one I can think of is the engine, but also production-wise. And the engine was allowing us to put animation, but to be able to synchronize like NPC together, to manage the interruption and all that was not something that was simple to do with our engine. So lots of the ideas were cut because of that. And when we were able to do them, it became like a problem of production because to create a very simple situation, with the Deus Ex game, you don't have a choice but to ask you what happened if the player do that, or there can do so many different
the
ways.
chaos and all that,
Yeah.
you know. And
He has augmentation that he can go and sneak, can be like invisible, so we will not interrupt. Someone will disappear. What do we do? What does he say? He start to talk to a guy before the event, after the event.
It's very complex.
So it becomes a something simple become very complex. So we always ask ourselves, what if? And for our game, when we want to create quality, so we will ask, will the player will be happy with the result, and we spend most of that time doing the side quests instead because there will be a good story that will be developed, and those encounters we decided to cut them or to change the scope and to something very simple.
Easy, man. Easy. I saw you.
coming to this station.
But how am I supposed to get up?
Jensen, Sarif had me hack the convention center security logs for you. Sandoval signed out. He isn't there. You really think he'll tell you in the middle of a riot? In front of all the media?
He will if I ask real nice.
Well, if that doesn't work, he also has a dressing room backstage. Seems to me a man like Taggart must keep close track of his employees. Speaking of which, I also backtraced that breach in our own firewall. The one Sarif opened but forgot to tell us about.
The one he was using right before he hired me. Right.
Looks like our boss was being chatted with a private detective named Brent Radford. He lives on Earl's Court. In case you want to get chatted with him too.
William. All.
The limb clinic actually, it's one of the few places where you cannot use your guns like in Serif Industries, and that was also a big debate in the team because the philosophy of the game is to let you play the way you want, and it's all about letting you face the consequences to your actions and everything. But for the chaos management in the game came in quite late, and if you really want to support it well,
we tried so many scenarios to support in both the limb clinic, the Serif building as well. Is just try to figure out how do we support chaos, and mostly with revisitation. When you go back to limb clinic, when you go back to Serif, how do we deal with that when Jensen is supposed to be a neutral character, almost an ally character, even more so in the Serif building. But even in the limb clinic, I mean, it's a neutral place where it doesn't make sense to create chaos, and then we wanted to support chaos everywhere, but technically was very, very challenging.
And actually, I remember endless meetings, the limb clinic, like weeks and weeks.
Yeah, and at first we put Markovic and everyone behind bulletproof glass so that if the player did create chaos, they would go into cowering mode, and we even wrote lines for them, like you could still get your augmentations even though you just shot and killed everybody in front of them.
They're still behind those lines.
They're still behind the glass.
It would have been possible to support it, but it would have felt kind of off, or to make it sound right. It would have been almost a
and
project
remember that for a big part of the development, we actually had to go to the limb clinic to get augmented. On top of that,
and that makes me think about exactly like with the Praxis kit system. Originally, you didn't have all the augmentations in your body, and you had to go basically getting there to have your legs cut and then be replaced by augmented
You
legs.
basically had to go under surgery every time you wanted
exactly.
Yeah, we had a whole
upgrade.
cutscene. You remember
Yeah,
that of
exactly.
the surgery?
Variations
and
of cutscene, they were
Yeah.
doing again.
And it was not totally elegant. And on top of that, the other problem that rose was that it was only giving the city hubs for the players to augment themselves. And at some part in the game, you go in Picus, you go there and there, and for a long time, you're not in a city hub. And we wanted to go with a system that was allowing the players to upgrade like
On the
whenever
fly.
they wanted, when they had the right XP points. And this is where the Praxis kits
And
came
I
in.
remember when you brought that up to me with the Praxis kits, I was ready to kill you because we'd already rewritten and re-recorded Markovic behind the glass twice. And now we had to rewrite her entire speech a third time and bring the actress back in yet again to record and make that make sense.
And you didn't kill me because you knew it was the right call, right?
So many people almost
If
got
you say
murdered
so.
on this game, man. Jesus Christ.
And also, one of the things that you did with Steve and everything was to have the doctors being like all DX team members and stuff. And
That's the if you pay attention to the when you're in the limb clinic and you'll hear the paging system and the people being paged, Dr. Chetri, Dr. Shipkowski, these are all members of the team.
And what happened to Markovic? She used to be pretty.
No, it's just that she was younger, but the model didn't work super
And yeah,
well.
she was younger, but it took us so much time to make that
She
game.
aged in the
She
game.
aged.
She aged with us.
If we had
But,
to age,
yeah.
she did too.
And also the visuals of the Limb Clinic. It's also one of the big cyber renaissance places of the game, and it kind of works okay, I guess.
So you notice that there's a lot of street signs all over the place in places like Hangsha and of course Detroit. And one of the things that fell on on the writing team at some point was we would see these signs very late in the production process. And at one point I saw one of these street signs for Detroit, and I realized that it was in metrics. It was not in feet and
It
miles.
was in the proper.
and
It was
things
in
like
the
this.
proper system.
And so
we needed to switch it to the
and as one of
crazy
the few
system.
Americans on this mostly French-Canadian team, I then had to basically send an email out to the whole team saying, guys, sorry, but we're in Detroit, and Detroit uses, doesn't use metrics, and so make sure that all your signs are in the correct
non-scientific
footage,
method.
Right.
Yes.
Can you tell me where Detroit is again?
Yeah. So anyway, so that was kind of funny because we sent that out, and I think that it was one of those kind of silly things that you're sitting there going, "Gee, nobody thought of that."
No, but it's true. No, it was really good that you made us notice. Yeah, that it was measured and yeah.
So that's why we had an American on the team.
Yeah, for that.
The only reason.
The only reason.
All right, so this was a subject that seemed to kind of raise a slight little bit of controversy,
Yeah.
even though we didn't see it coming for a mile. Basically, we had this character, Letitia, that she was designed or planned to design to be as a bag lady, a real hardcore hobo, because we had a lot of them. But Jensen had a relationship with her in the sense that she's been around and he's seen her around, and he often, I guess, would get information from her because it was kind of hinted at that, you know, that they had that type of rapport.
But first, if I could jump in and say, Letitia was a character who was added to the game very, very, very late. We were in beta already, and it was, we mentioned earlier about the David Seraph and having to bring him back in. When that call was made for the hostages, we said, the game design team said, or the level design team said, we
At the beginning, with the cutscene, with the riot cutscene, it was there to cover our fear that we wouldn't be able to pull off a riot in game. And now, actually, we're here, and we managed to do it actually with Frank's team. Like, you did it in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, we basically created a full-on ninja team except for the costume and all. But there was me, artists, the lead lighting. FX guys, animators, and we basically just did meetings, and every 2-3 days we just met, look at the game, look at the environment, just try to create the most asset. And also technically we couldn't do like swapping materials on billboards, and we wanted to focus that, having lights on maybe other choppers, how do we do that, and etc. How to create, because the whole place is basically the same architecture, the same geometry in Detroit 1, but how do we create scenarios, and having geometry inside scenarios we couldn't do. So there was a lot of technical questions and huge flags that we tried to sort out.
It's an excellent example of kind of like creative problem solving, this entire thing. Like, for example, you know, we knew that if we could see the entire street that leads towards Seraph Industries would have to fill all the street with like all sorts of action going on. That's when we had the idea, like we invented this idea that the cops have this wall that they use because they literally, when there's riots, they block places, right? But then it's like, what about if they have a wall and it's just little slits to see? And then it's like, well, that's gonna work because it's gonna block so much of the visibility, right? And all these little things.
In the end, it worked really well.
I think it works amazing.
And with the small, we wanted to hide some stuff, but if you actually use the X-ray, we can see a bit further. So we play one with one guy running around, but if you don't use this X-ray, you never see that guy. But in X-ray, you actually see.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that. I love the fact that you change the skin on a lot of the stuff. Like you have like obviously the cut box guards, and there's also one of the kind of like mechanical things that we have in the seaport. Now they also have the cup textures on them, and it's great work. It's great work.
So here's the weapon merchant inside of the gas station, and the whole gas station was a very old building that we kept from all the way back from the very first vertical slice. And instead of trying to redesign it as we went along in the production of the whole city hub, we actually tried to keep it because we thought it was one of the very cool things visually, and also gameplay-wise. There was a lot of potentials to do with it, and we always wanted to have a weapon merchant, a black market merchant inside of it. And the thing is, for us, since you work on a game, it's always you lose some kind of objectivity about what you think is good about your game. So for me, it was very obvious that there was someone in there. But from the playtests, almost every single playtester did not see the weapon merchant. So.
But we were debating like, should it be obvious or should it be hidden, and etc. And we went back and forth a couple of times until we decided, okay, let's make it more.
At some point, we had an icon about those guys and trying to create some kind of a Metal Gear Solid-ish type of group or something like that. And at the end, we said, fuck it.
What'll it be? Always.
So with the limb clinic, one of the interesting thing that happens in Detroit, we say that the tension between people who can afford augmentations and those who can afford, the tension is rising and everything. And we really wanted to feel that early on in the game that was palpable. You know, it's something that you could feel. And we had this idea through the first vertical slice about this riot that just happened.
Yeah.
And all the work, like it seems very simple, but all the work among level design, art design, story design to make this work and make you feel that something happened there.
Yeah.
There was quite a lot of work. Actually.
And there's a reason why we did this, because there was no way we could have done a real riot. You know,
Yeah.
because that's what we wanted at the beginning. We wanted to have like all these people. You know, there was a little crowd, but
there
then
was a crowd,
exactly.
and we had a chant, and we
the first
recorded
version-
the chant.
the first version I did is I placed a flaming car with a lot of stuff happening.
That's
like
true.
like
Yeah.
it was
I
like
remember
5
that.
minutes ago. There was a protest, and now
Yeah.
it's not. We even and there's also a some kind of a Easter egg ish about that story about the event that took place that the player never saw is the sniper rifle that you
Yes.
find on the gas station.
True.
Was just a quick story with two objects, a sniper rifle in the pockets, where the email on it is actually a contract about killing something to kill one of the protesters, just to kickstart the huge riot, which actually was cancelled. That's why the player can actually find the sniper rifle.
But for the riot, you had your revenge in Detroit too, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, and also like the design of the building again shows very well a bit of the art direction for the architecture. The idea is that it looks really much like cells, you know, like the way that the facade is done, which has to do with biology and all that kind of stuff. And it's pretty much taken from a real building that's it's in Tokyo, and I think it's a store actually, but it's very much alike. I have to admit, yeah.
So you notice that there's a lot of street signs all over the place in places like Hangsha and of course Detroit. And one of the things that fell on on the writing team at some point was we would see these signs very late in the production process. And at one point I saw one of these street signs for Detroit, and I realized that it was in metrics. It was not in feet and
It was
miles.
it was in the proper system.
And so
we needed to switch it to the
and as one of
crazy
the few
system.
Americans on this mostly French-Canadian team, I then had to basically send an email out to the whole team saying, guys, sorry, but we're in Detroit, and Detroit doesn't use metrics, and so make sure that all your signs are in the correct
non-scientific
footage,
method.
right.
Yes.
Can you tell me where Detroit is again?
Yeah. So anyway, so that was kind of funny because we sent that out, and I think that it was one of those kind of silly things that you're sitting there going, gee, nobody thought of that.
No, but it's true. No, it was really good that you made us notice. Yeah, that it was measured and yeah.
So that's why we had an American on the team.
Yeah, for that.
The only reason.
The only reason.
So here's the idea behind a convention center that we had. Like sometimes some convention centers, some of the smaller ones in cities, cater to a specific, industry or whatever. They don't. It's not that they're not going to let any other industries come do stuff there. But sometimes they cater to like new media. They cater to all sorts of things. And we said, hey, this one is in Detroit. Let's pretend. Let's make it as a convention center that usually hosts talks or conventions that have to do with transhumanism and augmentations and whatnot, right? But then it shows a personality of Taggart because he decided, you know what, my talk, my anti-augmentation talk, I'm gonna hold it. It's gonna be held inside that kind of like pro-transhumanist convention center.
It's really make a statement.
It's provocative. It's making a statement, exactly, and it's a free country, so you can do it. So the idea, that's why the place is extremely gold, just to represent this idea of the transhumanism in the art direction, and it's quite a nice place. It was one of our more junior kind of concept artists. I mean, he's not a junior, but not one of our most experimented guys. but he did an amazing job. This kind of like modern architecture, like kind of somewhat futuristic, but yet credible. The carpeting, beautiful, beautiful place. Really like it. Yeah.
When we pass the infamous locked door, and then we are in the VIP type of environment of the convention center where Bill Taggart is currently doing his press thing on the stage in front of the millions and millions of press media people.
You mean the four NPCs?
Well, those for me are actually millions, but anyway. I know I don't count. We had alternate paths to get, because the actual objective was not to talk to Bill Taggart himself, but to get the information. And the information was either was on his computer or Bill Taggart himself. So the player had choice, and we wanted to make sure that the player understands there are alternate paths, because everything was, well, we try to convey it towards the conversation with Bill Taggart, but as a level designer, I always have more interest on actual alternate paths, so maybe I focus a bit way too much on the actual alternate paths, batch rooms and scripting and the backstage and all that. So I had fun. But,
But after that, we realized that as you go through the corridor, what you see that is obvious is the alternate path.
Yes.
And that the auditorium is totally to your right. And now we had to build all those signs to be very obvious on the choke point to make sure that the players know that.
But what's funny is that it's right there on your right.
See this very expensive thing we created for them. To get
at the same
to
time,
see.
what's funny is that we did all these things to attract you there, but it's like 10 feet to your right. You know, it's just.
But it's surprising sometimes how players
absolutely
move in the game.
Evolution is a fantasy, but that is exactly what I am telling you. The world.
Where's your sidekick, Taggart? 6 months ago, Seraph Industries was attacked by mercenaries whose objective was to cripple our research. But I've learned the attack was just a smokescreen. Megan Reed's team was kidnapped, and Isaiah Sandoval, your personal aide, was involved.
That is ridiculous. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for Mr. Jensen's intrusion, and I assure you that these accusations are without basis.
Are they?
This is Sandoval. Why are you calling me here?
There's been a change of plans. Seraph's team must not make it to the hearing.
But that's too soon. If you want me to remove the GPLs, I'll need a full operating suite. Does the facility have one?
That's your man, Taggart. Talking about removing implanted GPL devices so that the people who took Seraph scientists could cover it up.
I see what's going on here. Seraph Industries has received 2 black eyes in the last few days. The first, due to the shocking news coming out of Montreal that biotech companies are secretly participating in unethical super soldier experiments. And the second, as a result of their violent escalation of today's peaceful protest. David Seraph and his corporate bedfellows are desperate and in imminent danger of losing the regulation vote, so this man has been sent here to attack my reputation.
I'm right here, Taggart. Look at me. I admit, I wouldn't feel bad if your reputation was damaged in front of the press, since you've been doing the same to my colleagues for years. But that's not why I'm here. Seraph scientists are alive, and it's time for the truth to come out.
The truth, Mr. Jensen, is that this recording of yours proves nothing. It could have been made by anyone in the world with a grudge against Humanity Front, and you are our prime suspect.
You're right, it's not enough to get a conviction. But it's enough for a search warrant. That's all I want, Taggart. Why are you standing in the way?
I'm not. I'm trying to protect... Look, Mr. Jensen. If you play that recording for the police, at best, they'll dismiss it. At worst, they'll tell you to seek counseling. So, why are you really here? We all know you suffered a terrible tragedy in the attack on Seraph Industries. Why can't you put it behind you?
Picking up my life after that surgery was the hardest thing I've ever done. Hell, first time I saw myself in a mirror, I smashed the damn thing. But I've gotten past it, because I know that what I need to do to make things right is help the other victims of that attack.
If you can't help yourself, how do you expect to be able to help anyone else? I saw this posture of yours countless times in my private practice. You're lost. You have no direction, and you have no idea how to get it back. So, in your mind, you've made me the ultimate enemy, imagining that if you knock me down, you'll get control of your life again. You're fooling yourself.
Idea, Taggart. Why don't I give my recording to that reporter down there? He has a machine that can prove it's real right now, once and for all. Of course, when he says it's genuine, I guess it'll be top news story for the next few weeks, and you can kiss your vote goodbye. On the other hand, if you talk to me backstage, I can hold on to this recording, and you can keep the benefit of the doubt for a little while longer.
Very adroit, Mr. Jensen. Nicely played. I see you have me over a barrel. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but I'm going to have to beg your indulgence for a few moments more. All please remain patient. I will return as soon as I can. Thank you. Mr. Jensen, I'll see you backstage.
So this social boss fight with Taggart, it actually represented a lot of challenges for this team to pull off. It was actually the second one that we ever wrote or ever tried to do. And we chose it second because we knew it was going to be a difficult one and we wanted to see if we could do it. We had all these plans to have the audience participating in it and stuff. But because we did it so early, we didn't even have a design for the room at the time, and we were just, which I'm sure, Frank, you probably
I love
appreciate
you for that one because having the social conversation already written and ready and all, and we didn't even start to do the level design on that place.
And you didn't start it for quite a few months,
exactly.
But we had to do it early, and it was also where we first tested the whole mocap of these conversations. And so we flew to LA with the actor, myself and one of the animators went to LA to carry this out and see. And the whole time we're like, we're not even sure, we've never really done this. We have no idea how to move it. And we were being so challenging in terms of having Jensen move closer. Can we even pull any of that off? So it was actually quite a challenge.
It was also stressful because the first one that we did was way nice, that we said it was hand animated. And it took roughly 6 months from writing the dialogues, the design of the dialogue through the final version of it, and we knew for the other ones we couldn't afford to have to take 6 months each. That's why we went to LA with the mocap session and everything. So it was really crucial because a lot of the leads and the team were not convinced that those encounters would work, and they were costing a lot to do and everything, and I defended them until the end, and finally we managed to pull them off.
And then it fell straight into the problem of sound and
with the
level
speech
design.
Yeah, well, for us, the fun part was that you walk in and you're supposed to hear Taggart giving his speech. The problem in an open world game, as we realized later on, was like, well, what if the player just stands there for half an hour? And what do we do? And how do we record all this speech and dialogue, and where does it come from? So we said, you know what? The hell with it. We're going to go with what they call walla, which is, overheard but undistinguishable. and it worked surprisingly well. Like, you know, you'd be surprised. You're wondering why do they have such bad sound systems and speakers in auditoriums in 2027? Well, this one just did, and it worked well, because once you walked in the auditorium, then we released and let the speech play. But until you go there, it's just a loop of Walla playing as you walk around the auditorium.
That's the quick story of Taggart.
Mr. Jensen, I appreciate you allowing me to deal with this in a more discreet manner.
Save it, Taggart. You've wasted enough of my time as it is. Now, where's Sandoval?
He has an apartment he uses when in this city, on Grand River Road. He mentioned he was feeling very run down, so I can only assume he went there.
I see.
He's not an evil man, Mr. Jensen. If he's done what you say, it's only because of his brother, Ezekiel. A man you might know better as Zeke Sanders.
Sanders? The man who attacked Sarah's manufacturing plant?
I knew nothing about it until after it was over, and then I tried. I tried to convince Isaias not to follow in his footsteps.
Good job.
Mr. Jensen, please. Isaias has done so much for so many needy people. People suffering from implant rejection. Promise me you will deal with him fairly.
That all depends on Isaias.
I understand, but please try.
So I'm not exactly sure how you may have pulled the information about where Isaias is located at this. There are many different ways to do it. If you could have gotten it from Taggart and thus would have seen him talking to you right now, or you would have had to get it off of the computer. And then, but what was really fun for us was all these things have repercussions. How you actually do it have repercussions on what's going to happen very, very soon in the story. Because as you end up getting to see Isaias, if you got the information from Taggart directly, Taggart is going to go on the air and he'll end up telling, basically leading to Isaias wanting to commit suicide. And if you snuck here, never got to Jensen, never got to Taggart at all, and agreed to Sarah's request to frame them, then Taggart will go on the air and you'll end up having to convince Isaias out of suicide. And there's one possible way that you will actually not have an entire conversation with Isaiah Sandoval to talk him out of it.
Yeah.
And that's if you basically sneak in here and then deny Seraph what he wants.
Exactly.
And in that instance...
And now when you meet Isaias, is going to attack you.
He'll actually attack you straight out. So it was interesting figuring out all those challenges and all those ways to connect it.
Yeah.
And it actually led to the possibility of cutting an entire conversation boss fight.
Absolutely.
So here you have one of the rare moments in Detroit when you actually hear an Asian American in
It
Detroit.
wasn't supposed to be this way. It was supposed
No,
to
it
be just
wasn't.
two guys, white or black, because we only had white and black NPCs inside the whole Detroit city, but both Detroit 1 and also Detroit 2. But
Yeah, but what happened was when you're dealing with this much dialogue and you have tools in the company that help you sort that dialogue and you have check boxes that tell you whether it's been recorded or not and it sorts for you. So when you're going for a recording session, it automatically selects for you all the lines. And somehow or other, it did not select the voice for that second actor in that. So it didn't get recorded, and it was until later we didn't catch it up right away, and we'd already released all of our Detroit actors, and all we had left to record were the Asians. So luckily we caught it at the last second, and so we got one of the Asian actors to record that line, but that's how come we have only one Asian actor in all of Detroit.
And also, if you look at the power tool that he's using, it's amazing.
It's
so well designed. This power tool just shows you the amount of details we went into this game. It's like you can't even see it. And
actually, if you go very, very close and you zoom on the tool, there's the John seal of approval.
This is my seal of approval. But there's a brand on it. There's a logo. There's everything. Just stop at the escalator, listen to the Asian voice, and then look at the power tool.
JJB quality.
It's amazing.
Come on, come on!
So, originally we wanted tons of side quests in the game. What happened, Pat?
Like when we started to work on Deus Ex, I mean the critical path was the main focus, and the side quest was we knew we wanted them, and we tackled that task later in production. And there was one moment where we said, okay, we're gonna do 25 side quests. We're gonna talk about all the different philosophy of the game. We're gonna support all the different mechanics. What a beautiful matrix of like what side quests will be. We're gonna spread them around the game. Every time the player goes in a city hub, he will have like 5 to 7 side quests to do, and then everything was possible. And when we started to implement them, the reality like really hit us. And I just remember that Jeff, I think at one point would have killed me because I will go see him every 2-3 weeks and I will say, okay, this is where we are. We have 25 side quests, but 2-3 weeks later we'll go see him. We can probably do just 23, or like then 2-3 months later we'll say, okay, we can only do 12.
Yeah, and my heartbeat was raising every single time.
Yeah, and I don't think you saw all the love and writing and rewriting that went into them, and we focus on the quality versus quantity. So what we end up doing was putting more side quests on the critical path, which basically people would be submerged in those alternate stories. And when we reached near the end of the game, we said we'll put more side quests because what's interesting, the player at the beginning discovers City Hub, and then we said player will play like to finish the game.
And since we cannot change exploration setups between Detroit 1 and Detroit 2, players could actually explore almost everything in Detroit 1, and in Detroit 2, well, there was not much more else to explore, only the additional side quests or a few things I managed to place in somewhere.